Art, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what led you to become a registered dietitian?
Sure. So, growing up, dance was a big part of my life. I love dance till this day. I incorporate it every single day. I definitely struggled with body image and self-esteem, even though I didn't know it at the time, being a dancer. So, once I went to college, I wanted to pursue psychology. I really felt I connected with others and was always the listener. And then, as I was still in the dance environment, I definitely struggled with disordered eating personally. And I wanted to incorporate psychology and nutrition together to help with eating disorders because nutrition is more than just the foods we eat. It's about eating behaviors. So I really want to intertwine the two. I really want to be successful in helping others heal their relationships with food.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. Um, can you share a little bit about your personal journey with disordered eating and kind of how it's influenced your career path?
Definitely. So there's so many different factors that influenced my experience with disordered eating, and it's more than food. Clearly, it took me a long time to learn about my behaviors, learn about my personality, learn about myself, learning about my influencers or my environment that I was in and how I responded. Right. So, in my position, it definitely was the comparison, definitely wanted to feel good enough, wanted to be the best. So it got to a point where I didn't have the education or the knowledge to know how to eat well. And it just went into a rabbit hole of just unhealthy patterns related to food. And being from an Italian household, of course, food was around us for every single emotion. So there's a lot of history with that. So once it became just a control over my life and I was ready to get help and acknowledge that I had an issue, I wanted to promote awareness for this and change our diet culture and change the world to the best of my ability and become that individual for people to turn to because there weren't a lot of resources when I was younger. And I know my family struggled a lot with trying to find help. And luckily, it brought me to my successes today because I am definitely in a great place where I help others now. And I can definitely say I've healed through this journey and it brought me into my passions.
I can see in your work that you're really passionate about, helping people that struggle with those disordered eating habits. And I can see that it's been influenced by your personal journey as well.
Yeah, definitely. And it's can be tough when there's so many things that trigger that for other people, trigger it for myself. It's our diet culture, unfortunately, that we live in that just keeps fueling that fire. And at least what we can do here is provide awareness.
Absolutely. So when you're working with clients that have a history of disordered eating, how do you approach nutrition counseling in like a very supportive and non-triggering way?
Yeah. So everyone is different. Everyone's experience is different. Their relationship with food is different from personalities to their behaviors. But I do focus on helping them rebuild a balanced, flexible relationship with food without guilt, without rigid rules. And health looks different for everyone. And we don't have to go to the extreme to find what really works for our bodies. I also like to link in psychiatrists, social workers. Mental health is so important in all of this and diving into the why and the true reasons behind the disordered eating and really find healing within that, which takes time and learning about ourselves.
What are some of the most common challenges that your clients face on their recovery journey, and how do you help them overcome those obstacles as their registered dietitian?
Yes. So another thing I wanted to add on was a big a big part of this process that contributes to the challenges of my patients as well is unlearning this diet culture and the messages that surround it and the false food beliefs that often drive disordered eating. So many people have lost touch with their hunger and fullness cues as an effect to this, or use food to cope with emotions without even realizing it. I work with clients to relearn how to listen to their bodies, recognize what they're truly feeling, and develop a more intuitive, sustainable approach to eating. So, also exposure to feared food is also key. So, that is a big challenge that my clients also face, is the good or bad foods and saying, oh, well, I can't have that food because, right, it's labeled in the category as bad. It's going to make me gain weight. When in reality, there's more science behind weight gain. And we won't go into that for today's purpose. But when we slowly reintroduce these foods in a supportive way, clients learn that eating doesn't have to be all or nothing. So, really breaking free from restrictive thinking and replacing these myths with evidence-based information, that they can build a healthier, more confident relationship with food and their bodies.
What tactics do you use to introduce those fear foods when dealing with
So,
people?
yeah, so there are some methods that can be used. So me and a therapist have done sit-ins at certain meals, right? Their fear foods maybe being pancakes, or some kind of treats, or maybe it's just a whole sandwich, right? There's so many different fear foods or these associations that they have just from false information out there or misinformation. So we sit in on them, whether it's during lunch or during a snack, and we both sit, and whether it's do mindful eating together and just facing through the biological response together, because quite often there'll be a fight or flight response or some kind of effect to that person, and really breaking that through exposure and getting through it together with that support has been really, really helpful. And slowly introducing it to them, even if it means just, oh, I can't have chocolate, I'm fearful of chocolate. I remember one of my um I guess exposure was putting chocolate chips in my oatmeal. It's not the chocolate chips in the oatmeal that causes weight gain, you know what I mean? So it's really trying to break free from those food rules, and through that experience you'll see that, oh my goodness, I was going through all these extremes and realized that it didn't have to be this way. I was making my life so much more difficult.
So without sharing any personal details, could you talk a little bit about a success story that, you really stuck with and kind of reaffirmed why you're doing this work?
Definitely. So one client who really stuck with me came in with an intense fear of just food in general, carbs. The way she was brought up with her family was just very judgmental towards foods. She's an actress. She's constantly in auditions from based on how she looks and all the pressures. She came in not having her period, and that's because she was at a weight that wasn't healthy for her and her hormones, which is important to say that you can be technically a healthy BMI, right? But if you're not getting your period, that's not a healthy weight for you. And I always, always talk about that too. Everyone has their own healthy weight. And with that said, once she learned this notion about her body and knowing that she needed more fuel, we worked on that together, and she wound up being able to get her period. And now at this point, it's maintaining that weight that she was able to gain, a healthy weight. She's at a normal weight. This is normal, but she's a weight that's healthy for her. And it's trying to fight the influencers or the social media pages or our diet culture or the career path that she's in, fighting those entities that will drag her back into the same pattern. So giving her that support through me and through her therapist, we work together on that. The interdisciplinary approach through dietitians and their therapists, even their doctors, all of us combined, has been shown to really help through the healing process.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that you mentioned, these outside factors. In this new age of social media, it feels like everyone kind of has the public eye on them, and they're dealing with all these outside influences and opinions on their body image. I feel like that affects things a lot.
Absolutely. I feel like it's been been the main focus, especially now with all these medications. It's just been the main focus of our sense of worth almost. I even see some social media pages that just shame others for their bodies, or saying, oh, if you eat this, you're a bad person. It's just it's getting so out of hand and just feeding in that all or nothing mentality, this black or white thinking that just leads us into this rabbit hole of mental health issues that are unnecessary, and body image issues, and just overall disordered eating patterns that are also unnecessary. When research has shown that as long as we're incorporating whole foods for the most part, but even if we're incorporating our favorite foods and we find that balance, we're living a long, healthy, high quality life.
Yeah. I think that that balance aspect is just so important in looking at this nutrition versus disordered eating habits. So speaking on social media and influencers and all of that, there's so much misinformation online about food, diet culture, nutrition. What is like one myth about nutrition and eating disorders that you wish people knew the truth about?
I'd say the biggest myth is that you have to cut out carbs or cut out your favorite foods in order to achieve a healthy weight or a certain physique, or reach your health goals. During my experience and during just all of my research rotation, we have learned that yes, there's certain ways to combine foods together. There's certain foods you should incorporate more of that are healthy for you. But having this all or nothing mentality is just fueling these negative relationships with food, but also this misassociation, meaning, oh, I'm going to have these bad foods. It's going to cause it's going to cause me to develop these certain diseases, which isn't the case. So I always tell people, when we do things in excess or we don't do enough of things, there's no balance there. It's uneven. So it's important to make sure, especially for your quality of life and what makes you truly happy, and really listening to yourself in those moments of what you want personally to even just eat or enjoy. It's important to take a step back and not let other people influence your decisions with those, and know your own goals, because there's so much misinformation out there labeling foods as good and labeling foods as bad nowadays, especially, that people don't even know what to eat at this point. And it's disheartening because it doesn't have to be overcomplicated to just fuel your body and to focus on the most important thing in life, which is purpose and what you're grateful for, and really taking it day by day and finding something that can make you smile.
So for those watching who have a loved one who is struggling with disordered eating, what advice would you give them in the best way to be supportive?
The best thing you can do, avoid making comments about their body or their food choices, being a support system or ear if they need, but also allowing them to speak freely and express how they're feeling or express what bothers them, maybe of what you're saying or the environment that they're in, because this way you can really truly help them. Sometimes our environment is hard to control, especially with our families. So at least allowing them to be a voice, because there may be things that you say that is positive, but may be misunderstood and be triggering for some. And in that case, it's important to remember that recovery takes time, it takes patience. And even if you want to encourage professional support when needed, that's always helpful too.
Can you give like an example or two of something that a family member might say that they don't realize is harmful?
Yeah, I feel like every single one of my patients has come to me trying to heal. Every single one of my patients come to me and always mention that a family member through their journey has rubbed them the wrong way in regards to their food choices. Meaning, I'm working with a patient who's trying to heal their relationship with food, and her father is a doctor who just keeps telling her she needs to lose weight, needs to lose weight. Whereas the mother is making comments about her going into the fridge or making a sandwich or making comments saying, oh, you're going to eat all of that, didn't you just eat? Oh, you're putting that in your coffee, you're putting cream in your coffee, you should have your coffee black. So it's just things like that that are little tidbits that are also misinformation too. Everyone has their own goals, right? So just being aware of those minor comments regarding food and people's choices, and even within yourself. So there's a lot of times where maybe you're out to dinner with somebody and you're eating the same exact thing and they're like, oh my gosh, I shouldn't have eaten that. It's like, come on. They're healing their relationship with food and they ate that and they felt like that was a success for them. So eating
Yeah.
that whole plate of food and not, picking out the protein and just, leaving all the components of a delicious cultured cuisine, um, we're missing sight on the enjoyment of our food and the cultures of the food and also the experiences. So really checking in with any judgy statements regarding food or body image or comments on body
Yeah.
parts, whether it's of yourself or with other
I
people.
think that it is also like you to highlight what you said about yourself, like making comments about your own body in front of someone who is dealing with disordered eating can be triggering.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people don't realize that. And then going back to what you said about like, oh, I shouldn't have eaten that, that is also assigning morality to eating. And
Yes.
it
Yeah,
is a neutral act, and it should be a neutral act.
absolutely. Like you're not a bad person for what? What are you doing? You're enjoying a meal that a chef created for you that we should be grateful of being able to have this experience or
Yeah.
food on our table. I that may sound silly to people, but in the end of the day, that's what it is. And that's
Yeah.
why it's a, alarming for all of us that we're focusing in on the wrong things for happiness or worthiness.
What is one simple and actionable tip that you would give someone trying to heal their relationship with food?
Is watching your judgment statements with yourself.
Ooh, okay.
And it may sound really, really simple at first, but sometimes you have to break it down like that. So really practicing curiosity instead of judgment, writing, instead of labeling foods, like I always say, as good or as bad, or feeling guilty after eating, ask yourself, why am I feeling this way? Maybe you have your period. Maybe you skipped lunch and, you're craving, some extra fat and sugar, which is normal, right? So just kind of checking in with yourself and saying, why am I feeling this way? What does my body actually need? Learning to listen to your body with kindness rather than punishment will make all the difference in this healing process. It takes time to relearn hunger and fullness cues. It takes time to trust your body. There's quite often a misassociation by trusting your body and following intuitive eating and following these mindful practices will just cause weight gain and an unhealthy body, when in reality it's doing the opposite effect. When you're healing your relationship, you're not going to the extreme or over obsessing with foods and then you want them more and then it becomes a vicious cycle. So if we can really incorporate those foods and listen to our bodies and are being able to just be satisfied off of maybe a little bit at a time, you're setting yourself up for success and not labeling things as forbidden, which has been shown to making you want those things more. And that's why people will think, oh, like there's, sugar is addiction, when in reality, it's our thought processes and how we're conditioning ourselves with our relationships with our food. So I think it's good to really check in with yourself.
Yeah, and I think that reframing is really important, just like on a
Yes.
personal level. Like you're thinking this thing about food. Okay, let's take that, let's reframe that into something more positive, more
Yeah.
neutral, even. It doesn't have to be positive, it's just neutral. Food is
Neutral.
neutral, eating is neutral.
Just neutral.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with that. And we may not like everything about our bodies. We may not, and the thing is, it's important to remember that our body is just the outer capsule of what we truly are in our soul. And that's what's really important.
All right. So, one final question. If you could give one piece of advice to someone currently struggling with disordered eating, what would that be?
Healing is possible. You deserve a relationship with food that feels freeing and not stressful. It's okay to take small steps, challenge old beliefs, unfollow toxic social media pages, which you can do. And I highly suggest that. And trust that your body is on your side. You're going to have a lot of maybe tug of war with maybe the emotional side of your mind that's telling you, oh, don't listen to the logical side of your mind. Continue doing what you're doing, which may not be the best for you. But fighting that negative thought process or supporters of that negative thought process. Maybe your environment is triggering you in ways, and being able to say, hey, I know that that's not okay, and allowing yourself to continue through your healing and through your recovery. Recovery isn't about perfection, it's about progress.
Perfect. All right, Dana, thank you so much for joining us and having this conversation today. I think it's really important to be talking about these things, especially when people are, going into nutrition. It's really hard to find that balance if they have that history of disordered eating. So, thank you so much for being open about that.
No, thank you. It was my pleasure. It was nice being able to share my experience and help everyone else.